I don't talk about this often. Even now, when I do, my voice lowers on its own. It's not because I'm afraid of being judged. It's because part of me still feels like he's there listening. When my brother was killed, my world stopped moving. He was the loud one, the kind of person who filled a room without even trying. When he laughed, you couldn't help but laugh with him. And when he was gone, the silence he left behind felt like a wound that wouldn't close. The police called it a violent accident, something about a robbery gone wrong. But the way they said broken neck stayed with me. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't even stay in my own house. Every corner reminded me of him. The mug he always used, the jacket on the back of the chair, his cologne faint in the hallway. So I went to stay with my aunt near Waco, Texas. Her place sat on a quiet road, surrounded by trees that whispered whenever the wind passed through. It was peaceful, the kind of peace that felt forced, too still, like the calm right before a storm. For the first few days, I barely left the guest room. I would just sit by the window, watching the road, listening to the ticking clock on the wall. My aunt tried to be kind. She'd leave food by the door, knock softly, and never ask too many questions. I think she knew I wasn't ready to speak. I carried one thing with me everywhere: my brother's handkerchief. It was white once, but time and sweat had turned it pale gray, with his initials stitched in one corner. He'd carried it every day. When they gave me his belongings, that handkerchief was folded neatly in a small plastic bag, still smelling faintly of the cologne he used. I kept it with me like it was a piece of him, the last thing I could hold on to. After about a week, my friends found out where I was. They were worried, said I was shutting everyone out. So one by one they started visiting. Each would take turns dragging me out for walks, trying to remind me what air and sunlight felt like. Most of the time I didn't want to go. But one day my most straight-laced friend, Michael, showed up. Michael was the kind of guy who never believed in anything he couldn't explain. A businessman, logical to the bone. He didn't do feelings. But when he showed up at my aunt's porch that afternoon, holding 2 cups of coffee and smiling that quiet, steady smile, I couldn't say no. Before we left, I folded my brother's handkerchief and placed it in my pocket. I remember the texture, soft but worn thin at the corners, like it might tear with one wrong move. I patted my pocket once just to make sure it was there, then followed Michael out the door. It was one of those Texas afternoons where the light feels heavy, pressing down on you. The air was warm, smelling faintly of dry grass and old wood. We walked without talking much, just the sound of our shoes crunching on the gravel road and the cicadas buzzing in the distance. After a while, we turned back toward the house. That's when it happened. We were walking up the front steps when I stopped. My hand hovered over the doorknob and I felt something, not like a sound or a sight, but a pressure, a presence. I can't explain it better than that. It was as if someone was inside, waiting. "That's weird," I said quietly. "It feels like someone's home." Michael frowned. He looked at me for a second, then at the door. "I was just about to say the same thing," he admitted. "I thought I heard something move." That surprised me. He wasn't the type to feel things. If even Michael sensed it, I knew it wasn't just my imagination. I slowly turned the handle and pushed the door open. The hinges creaked, that long, tired groan that old doors make when they haven't been opened all day. The house was dim inside, sunlight filtering through the blinds in thin, dusty beams. And then I froze. Standing in the doorway between the dining room and the kitchen was my brother. At least that's what my eyes told me. But it wasn't him. Not really. It was more like a shadow wearing his shape. I could see the outline of his body, the familiar slope of his shoulders, the short hair that never stayed flat. But it was all blurred, dim, like smoke caught in sunlight. He looked at me and smiled. That same crooked smile he always gave when he was teasing me. For a second I forgot how to breathe. But then my stomach dropped, because his neck was twisted, tilted to one side at an angle no living person could hold. I don't remember moving. I just remember sound, my heartbeat pounding in my ears, the dry scrape of my shoes on the floor. And then he was gone, vanished, like he'd never been there. I turned to Michael. "Do you see him? Do you see him?" My voice broke, louder than I meant. He stared, eyes wide, face pale. "And no," he stammered. "I don't see him, but I feel him. And I see that." He pointed to the floor between the dining room and the living room. There, lying perfectly flat on the ground, was my brother's handkerchief, neatly unfolded, the initials facing up. For a second I couldn't even move. I reached for my pocket. It was empty. Michael saw it too. He'd watched me fold that same handkerchief and put it in my pocket before we left. Neither of us said another word. We just stood there, staring at the fabric on the floor, the air thick with that faint smell, like burnt paper and cologne. Finally, Michael said, barely above a whisper, "Let's go." And we did. We stepped outside into the blinding sunlight, both shaking but pretending we weren't. He locked the door behind us, though I don't remember asking him to. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the floorboards sounded like footsteps. I tried to convince myself it was stress, grief, imagination, anything that made sense. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw that bent neck, that smile that wasn't quite right. 2 days later, the police called. They'd gotten new information about my brother's death. He hadn't died instantly like they first said. There were signs of a struggle, bruising on his arms, defensive wounds. And then they told me the part that still makes my stomach twist when I think about it. His neck had been broken. The exact way I'd seen it, turned almost perfectly to one side. I remember dropping the phone. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring at the wall, the faint scent of his cologne still clinging to the handkerchief I had found on the floor. After that day, I never saw him again. But sometimes late at night, when the house goes quiet, I catch that smell, faint and sudden, like someone passing by. And for a second, I feel the same heaviness in the air, like someone standing in the next room, watching, waiting. You'd think time would dull it, that it would fade into memory like everything else. But it doesn't. Every detail stays as sharp as the day it happened. The way the sunlight came through the blinds, the chill that spread through my chest, the exact way his head tilted when he smiled. I've tried to rationalize it. Maybe grief does things to the brain. Maybe we see what we need to see to make sense of loss. But then there's Michael. He's still the most logical person I know. And even now, years later, when I bring it up, he won't talk about it. His face goes pale and he changes the subject. Once, after a few drinks, he told me, "I didn't see him, but I swear to God I felt someone standing between us. And that smell, I still can't forget it. I know what I saw. And I know that handkerchief didn't unfold itself. Sometimes I think about what he wanted that day. Maybe it wasn't to scare me. Maybe it was to be seen, one last time, to let me know what really happened to him. But then I think about the way his smile looked, too wide, too calm, too aware. And I'm not so sure. Because sometimes when I walk past mirrors or glance into dark corners, I feel it again, that quiet, watching presence. Not angry, not loving, just there. And every time I feel it, I whisper the same words under my breath, like a prayer I don't really believe in. I still have your handkerchief. I still remember the first time I drove through Miller's Creek. It was one of those places you don't really plan to stop at. A small town tucked between long stretches of highway, surrounded by cornfields and silence. I was 28 at the time, working freelance as a photographer for a local paper in Austin. Most of my assignments were simple: old barns, family portraits, sometimes documenting small-town ghost stories for seasonal editions. That's what brought me there in the first place. A missing person case that had quietly faded from the headlines. A woman named Clara Vance had disappeared 2 years ago. She was 27, a school teacher, kind, well-liked. One night, she just didn't come home. Her car was found parked beside an old bridge near Miller's Creek. Keys still in the ignition, purse on the seat, and no sign of a struggle. The police had their theories, maybe an accident, maybe suicide, but her family never believed it. They said she was terrified of water. I didn't know her, but something about her story got under my skin. Maybe it was that picture of her in the paper, that faint half-smile like she was holding something back. Or maybe it was how quietly the story had disappeared, like the town wanted to forget. So I decided to go there myself. When I arrived, Miller's Creek looked half asleep. Wooden houses with chipped paint, a single diner, a sheriff's office that looked frozen in the 70s. The air had that late summer heaviness, like dust and damp soil after rain. I stopped at the diner for coffee. The waitress recognized Clara's name the moment I mentioned it. She poured my drink and said softly, "Oh yeah, that poor girl. You're not the first one to come asking." I asked who else came before me, and she hesitated, glancing toward the window. "Some blogger last year. Said he was writing about missing people. Stayed out near the old Miller house. Never saw him leave." I frowned. "You mean he disappeared too?" She just shrugged. "Didn't say that. just never saw him again. I laughed it off, but something about the way she said it, slow, almost practiced, stuck with me. The Miller house sat near the creek where Clara's car was found. It wasn't abandoned exactly, but it felt like it. The front gate was rusted, the grass grown high enough to hide the steps. The owner, an old man named Henry, rented rooms for cheap. He opened the door before I could even knock. "You hear about the teacher?" he asked in a low voice. I nodded. "Thought so," he said. "They all come sooner or later." The inside smelled like old books and damp wood. The walls were lined with faded photographs, portraits, landscapes, one of the bridge. I took a room upstairs. The bed was firm and the window looked out toward the creek. That night, the crickets outside were loud, the kind that fill silence until you start hearing things that aren't really there. Sometime after midnight, I heard faint footsteps in the hallway, slow dragging. I thought it was Henry, but when I peeked through the crack of the door, the hallway was empty. Then I noticed something else. The door to the room across from mine was slightly open. I could have sworn Henry said no one else was staying there. The next morning, I drove down to the bridge. It wasn't much, old wooden planks and rusted railings. Below it, the creek moved quietly, brown and slow. I could see where Clara's car had been found, a small patch of flattened grass near the water. As I took photos, a sheriff truck pulled up behind me. The man who stepped out was middle-aged, thick mustache, sunglasses hiding his eyes. "You're not supposed to be here," he said flatly. I told him I was a reporter doing a follow-up on Clara Vance and showed him my press card. He looked at it, then at me. "That case is done," he said. "Let it stay that way." Before I could ask anything, he just turned and walked away. No goodbye, no warning, just that. I stood there, feeling the wind shift, and for a second I thought I heard something beneath the bridge, like a whisper carried through the reeds. It wasn't quite a voice, more like a breath that almost formed one. That night, I stayed up going through the photos I'd taken. Most looked normal, bridge, water, trees, but one frame caught my attention. There was a figure standing at the far end of the bridge. At first, I thought it was a trick of light, maybe a tree or a shadow, but zooming in, I could see her clearly. A woman facing away from me, hair falling over one shoulder. And then I noticed something worse. In the water beneath her, the reflection wasn't matching her pose. The reflection was facing me. I checked the timestamp. That photo was taken at 3:17 p.m. I was sure no one was there then. A chill ran down my spine. I tried to laugh it off, but that crawling unease wouldn't go away, that quiet feeling that someone is standing right behind you, even when you know they're not. The next morning, I went to the town library to look for old records. The librarian, a woman in her 50s, looked uneasy when I said Clara's name. "You won't find much," she said. "Some records went missing." I asked what she meant. "Police reports, articles, even her school files. It's like she never worked here." I frowned and asked who took them. She lowered her voice. "Sheriff's office said it was a mix-up, but I saw the boxes myself. They were gone overnight." Something about the whole town felt wrong, like everyone had quietly agreed not to remember. That night, I woke to the sound of dripping water. The air smelled different, damp, earthy, like river mud. My window was closed, but when I stepped down, my socks soaked instantly. There was water on the floor, and a thin trail of muddy footprints leading from my doorway into the hallway. Bare feet, small ones. I followed them, every step slower than the last, until I reached the door across from mine, the one that was supposed to be empty. It was open now. The room beyond was dark, heavy, the kind of darkness that swallows the light. I raised my phone's flashlight. The walls were wet. Every inch glistened, as if water had seeped straight out of the wood. And then, on the far wall, I saw it. A photograph pinned there. It was the same one I'd taken at the bridge. But this time, the woman wasn't facing away. She was turned toward the camera. Her face was visible. It was Clara. The next morning, I confronted Henry. "You said no one else was staying here," I told him. "Then who's in that room?" He looked at me for a long time. His hands shook slightly as he poured his coffee. "She comes back sometimes," he said quietly. "Always to the same room. Always after someone new arrives." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean, she comes back?" He didn't answer right away. He just stared out the window toward the creek and said, "They never find them, you know. The ones who look too long." That was it for me. I packed my things. I left before nightfall, planning to drive straight back to Austin. But as I passed through town, I noticed people staring out from their windows, not moving, just watching like they knew I shouldn't leave. Halfway down the highway, my car started to sputter. I pulled over, of course, right near the same bridge. I got out to check the hood, but before I could touch it, I heard footsteps. Slow, careful, approaching from behind. I turned and saw the sheriff. "You shouldn't have come back," he said. I told him I didn't, that my car had just broken down, but he didn't seem to hear me. He stepped closer and I realized his uniform was wet. His boots left dark, damp footprints on the road. His voice dropped lower. "Once you've seen her," he said, "it's already too late." Then he walked right past me over to the railing and looked down into the water. "She doesn't take people," he said softly. "They follow." When he turned back to face me, his skin looked pale, swollen, waterlogged. I stumbled back, heart racing, jumped into the car, and somehow it started. I didn't look back. 2 weeks later, back home in Austin, I tried convincing myself it was stress or exhaustion, but the photos wouldn't stop changing. Every time I opened the folder on my computer, something new appeared. Shapes in the background, faces, and in one of them, Clara was standing a little closer. One morning, I woke up and found a single wet footprint beside my bed. Just one. A week later, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, it was a woman's voice, soft, calm, familiar. "You shouldn't have left," she said. My throat went dry. "Who is this?" I asked. Silence. Then, almost a whisper, "Come back to the bridge, please." The line went dead. That night, I opened my photos again. And this time, it wasn't just Clara anymore. I was standing next to her. 6 months later, they found my car near the bridge. Keys in the ignition, wallet on the seat. The sheriff filed it as another disappearance. The locals don't talk about it anymore. They never do. But sometimes on quiet nights, drivers say they see a woman and a man standing side by side on the bridge, staring down into the dark water. And if you slow down long enough, they might turn to look at you.